Most people think that Africa is poor, but what if I tell you that Africa is rich, very rich than you actually think it is, right? So in this video, we're going to discuss that and also why I say that Africa is not seen as rich. Why do we have a lot of wealth, but our people are not benefiting from it? We're also going to discuss that and also maybe the causes that has made Africa be the way it is, right? Let's get to it. One is the natural resources, right? Well, according to the internet, Africa holds over 30% of the world's mineral reserves, right? Considering all the mineral reserves in the whole world, 30% of it is in Africa. 90% of the world's platinum and chromium, 70% of the world's tantalite, which is used in electronics. Considering now that big tech companies, they need these tantalite so much to manufacture the electronics and different types of electronics because now the world is digital, right? It also has 70% of the world's cobalt, 40% of the world's gold, and large reserves of diamonds, bauxite, uranium, and manganese. While in some countries like Nigeria, Angola, and Libya, there are oil and gas, and in these countries actually lead in terms of production of oil and gas. In also a country like Congo, right, the Congo Basin, there is forest and timber, which is used in generation of wood and also manufacture of things like paper, right? So this just one of it. Then let's go to the second one, which is agricultural wealth. Well, Africa has about 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. Uncultivated keyword, right? So imagine if Africa could just like tap this into this opportunity, make sure the 60% of the land is used is cultivated, and imagine the amount of food that we could produce. That means that the continent could be self-sustainable in terms of food, and also we could export much of it to different parts of the world, right? So so and land is actually one of the factors of production if you studied economics. So and if you were supposed to build wealth, then you need some land, and 60% of it is in Africa. So that just tells you how much Africa is actually rich than most people think it is. Although some maps around the world portray Africa as small as it is. In fact, I think Greenland, in some maps, the way it's been portrayed, you think that Africa is smaller than Greenland, but in reality, Africa is actually, I think, second largest continent in the world, right? So you can see that land is wealth. Also talk of the people. And when we talk of people, which is now the third reason why Africa is rich, is wealth than you think it is, you think of labor as another factor of production, right? And 60% of Africans are actually below the age of 25. And if you think of the age of 25, those are people who are energetic, people who are not old, and of course they have the energy to work. That means that labor is actually abundant in Africa. There is huge population in Africa, and very well educated population. Okay, in a country like Kenya, literally a lot of people are learned. That's why you find that in most African countries there are lack of jobs because there is oversupply of labor compared to the sources of employment, right? So, and in fact, by the way, there is some study which projects that by 2050, Africa will be the most populous continent in the whole world, right? So, imagine in 2050, Africa having the most number of people. So, what does that mean? That means that the consumers will be in Africa, most of the consumers, and that means that Africa is actually the future. So, when it comes to workforce potential, the innovation, entrepreneurial growth, that means that the population actually is the one that drives that. Then the fourth one is the culture and the creative capital. So speak of the music, the dance, actually the Afro beats and the ones that are way common nowadays, and they've been exported to different parts of the world. And so that I think that creativity just comes from as a result of the population, right, in Africa. So the African population leads to that factor makes us rich at the same time, right? Another very important thing is the location. Location is just look at Africa on the map, right? We are at the center of the world, so to put, because we have the equator crossing, cutting between across Africa. So some part of Africa is located in the northern hemisphere, and another one is on the southern hemisphere. And so that just gives us a lot of sunlight, uh, 12-hour sunlight, by the way. We don't have so much different variations in terms of climates. And that means that we could produce a lot. That means here in Africa, the plants produce so much, right? And the conditions are favorable. So, and it favors both different types of agriculture, including wildlife and also the plants. Because and if you come to check on it, you'll see that during the winter seasons, right? Tourists fly from different parts of the world because now they have climate issues, right? There's winter there, and now they come here because here we have like summer full time. Yeah, so I think that's just one of the factors that contributes to Africa being wealth, right? So let's now talk about why is it that Africa is not benefiting from its wealth, right? Because majority of Africans are still below the poverty line, right? Now is where we talk of the paradox of wealth, right? Another person could say colonialism, right? So in the 1900s, I think there was the scramble of Africa. That means the European powers decided to subdivide themselves equally so that they avoid fighting. Uh, I think from a case like in Ethiopia, some European powers were fighting for that to take control of that land. That means just to extract the resources, right? So colonialism is one of the factors that contribute to Africa not benefiting from its wealth, and there is and they are still exploiting it up to date, right? Recently, you find that some African leaders have been killed because they try to speak for the people, right? Talk of Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. Talk of the Congolese leader. Yeah. So you try to defend your people, they try to attack you. Talk of someone like Ibrahim Traore, right? So the fact that they are trying to detach themselves from West, now they become a victim of the West, right? Another one is lack of processing plants, right? So you find that majority of African resources are exported as pure raw materials. Talk of coffee. In Kenya, Kenya exports coffee, the best coffee actually, to different parts of the world. And you realize that we export them cheaply and then they go process and then they sell back to us at a very expensive prices. So what do we do? Because now we don't have those processing plants. I think we should just develop those because we need them. Another factor is political instability. Countries like Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there's been war, there's been political instability, and that contributes to Africa not developing and not benefiting from its wealth, right? And also another one is corrupt leaders. We've got corruption in Africa a lot. And for example, here in Kenya, there's been a lot of scandals when it comes to governance, major scandals. So that corrupt leaders, those people who eat from the many, contributes to many of the African suffering are not benefiting from its resources and at the continent as a whole. So Africa isn't really poor. It's just there are some things that we need to improve on to work on, and also believe in ourselves. Maybe be united, and as a result of that, we should benefit and grow from our own resources, right? And why is it that we have a lot of difficulty when it comes to movement across different borders, right? You find that a European can move easily across Africa compared to us Africans ourselves, right? I think that's what we need to think about, and also, yeah, for us to build Africa, right? So, what do you think? Leave your comments in the comment section. And of course, do you think we are rich, or do you think Africa is rich than it actually is? I'll see you in the next one.